more than 100,000 Japanese, 150,000 Okinawans, and 14,000 Americans died in the fighting. On the minds of all the American survivors is where they're headed next. Most expect to be rested and refitted for the coup de grace, the invasion of the Japanese home islands. Newly sworn-in President Harry Truman knows that an invasion of Japan will be a massacre for both sides. The bloody toll of Okinawa is clearly on his mind as he considers the alternatives.
It had a great impact on Truman and his decision to drop the bomb.
All I can say is thank goodness the bomb was dropped, because that precipitated the surrender. They weren't about to quit.
With the surrender signed, some of the veterans of Okinawa will move on to Japan as occupation troops. Others will be stationed elsewhere in the defeated empire. Eventually, they will all return home and try to resume their lives. To move on, but never to forget.
I was not the best soldier in the world. I may have been one of the luckiest. Some very fine and good soldiers didn't make it.
Some of the people that we lost I was very close to, and I think of all of them, especially once a year. I have a little prayer for them. Excuse me.
Okinawa, the last page of the last battle of World War II. Today we remember Okinawa by many ways because we know that that was a stepping stone to the finalization of World War II. As we know, the atom bomb was dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And as such, the World War II finally came to its close in 1945. Today we have with us a person who was there at Okinawa. And as we sit and listen and view this picture that we just saw, we saw what the massive sacrifice was, and that was 38,000 American lives that were lost there at Okinawa. John, one place in the picture they were talking about the capital, Naha, Okinawa, and there was a lot of action took place there, and you was in most of it.
Yes.
Tell us about what that was like.
Well, it's indescribable, really, Jimmy. But the place where I was, two other combat medics and myself were responding to a radio call from a group of Marines who had been hit by a Japanese force there. And this was just outside the town of Naha. And there was a cemetery there, and this is where we found them. Mm-hmm. And they were laid out among the stones and markers there. And we no sooner arrived than snipers shot and killed the two combat medics that were with me. So I'm there all by myself and wondering what to do, and half scared.
Sure.
Wondering what to do. And I noted that behind us was a big cornucopia type thing. It was open at one end and tapered down into nothing, but that was the only opening there. And we had found 3 Marines that had been wounded, and I just thought, well, I'll drag them in there one at a time, and I did. Dragged them in there, and it's probably about, I judge about 30 to 40 yards from where they were inside this cornucopia. And I dragged each of them into there. Just at the very opening, I thought I wanted to get away from immediate open area of hostile fire. Once I got them in the opening of the thing, then I could get back there and pull them in a little further, which I did. And no sooner got that done than another Japanese battalion or company, I don't know which, boy, they came storming down the front there, firing and screaming to hell with Babe Ruth. That was their favorite expression.
Mm-hmm.
And only they said to her with Babe Ruth. They can't say hells.
Mm-hmm.
And I had retrieved the weapons that the Marines had out there. Two of them had BARs, the other one a Garand rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And they both had pouches of ammunition around their waist, so I got ready for what I thought maybe might be a last stand. I took the ammunition belts off the three of them, kept them right at my disposal, put two of them over my shoulder, and I just waited until the Japanese started coming through the big opening. And sure enough, they did. They'd come in screaming, holding their bayoneted rifles in the air. And I just took my good old American time and dispatched them one at a time as they came in. I'm glad they didn't all come in there at the same time, because I'm sure some group of them, small group as it would have been, would have gotten to me and to the three Marines that I dragged in there. But it worked out very nicely, one at a time, and just like shooting ducks in a gallery. And there was a big lull in the assault on the front of this place. And so I took time to make sure I had plenty of ammunition. And I checked all the clips and the weapons, and they were all full. And I thought, well, by golly, this will be my final assault if need be. But it did not happen. Right about at that time, here comes a whole company of Marines. And it was led by, I'll never forget his name, Lieutenant Danny Brewster.
Mm-hmm.
He and his Marines were in a scouting party in an adjacent small mountain or hilltop, and they heard all this fighting, shooting going on. He looked through his binoculars and saw what was going on, so he brought his group over there. He said, we got to get over there and help those people, see what we can do. And they came down off that one small mountain, forged themselves across a couple of streams, and came up one side. And by the time they got to the front of this cornucopia type shield that I was in with the other guys, there was no more activity. And all the dead Japanese were scattered around the front, and it made quite a difference just having them there, because I felt sure that there would more than likely be another assault. And after they had arrived there, sure enough, another large group of Japanese came down running and through the cemetery, and another fight was on then. And I was so glad that Lieutenant Brewster and his group of Marines were in there at the time, because they suffered a few casualties while they were there, but luckily they didn't have anyone killed. But they wiped out the entire detachment of Japanese that were headed our way. And I'll tell you, I can look back on it now and wonder how in the world did all that come about. Anyway, it just seems like a dream or a nightmare, if you will, that it all worked out the way it did. And when it was all over, we decided to take account of the dead Japanese. And I think it was like 74 of them that we had gotten. And of course, we always looted the bodies, see if they had anything valuable on them. And we'd take their billfolds and take our electrician's pliers and go in their mouth. And if there's any ghoul teeth, you extracted those. Sounds kind of ghoulish today, but back then, that's just the way it was.
In your citation, as I recall, the Purple Heart citation you have, and General Roy Geiger commented to the President of the United States when you were there at the White House that he had petitioned you for the Medal of Honor for a special act that took place in Okinawa. I think this was some resemblance to it. But to reenact, let's reenact that moment when there was a firefight going on, bullets were flying every place, and you were a medical corpsman, and these Marines were wounded badly, and you went to the rescue. I'd like you to tell the people exactly what that was like and how your career as a medical corpsman ended on Okinawa that fatal day when you were doing all these acts of mercy, if we may, in saving the lives of these Marines. Can you bring us up to date on that particular time?
After we had determined that the assaults for that immediate time of the day was at an end, and we were just trying to just recover from that assault, a few more Japanese came down. It wasn't near as many, and they were hiding themselves behind tombstones, grave markers, and what have you, taking pot shots at us. They had snipers out there taking shots. And once again, we took up the cause, and Lieutenant Brewster sent quite a few of his men in a roundabout way to get behind these guys. We didn't know how many there were, but they went out, and from each side they took out, I don't know, I think it was another 20 or 22 Japanese. And while they were doing this, one Japanese, he came running up, and he stopped, and he threw a hand grenade. And it hit the ground, and I picked it up and I threw it back at him. And he seemed kind of surprised, and he caught the thing in these two hands. It's like it was a baseball. And he threw it back at me again. And this time, I don't know, it was 6-8 feet out in front of me, and it exploded in midair. And I caught a big chunk of the explosion right side of my face, and I was lucky it didn't get into my eye, but it ripped my helmet off, and it just made a mess of the right side of my face. And
A lot of agony, a lot of pain, I guess.
a lot of pain there, and boy, oh boy, after a while, I guess I blacked out from the shock, and